Hey, hi, can you guys hear me? What's up? What's up? What's the vibe? Let me know. Can you guys see me? Can you guys hear me? I can't get it together. I know I was late tonight. My bad. There's a lot going on the YouTube streets, I must say. Can you guys hear me? See me? What's up? Oh, Dasha, I hope you're okay. Take whatever time you need, girl. We're here. We are here. Okay, we're going to continue. Hi, welcome everyone. We're just gonna continue watching the Menendez brothers' first trial. Um, as you guys know, there's been a lot of controversy on that today. I believe the district attorney said they will submit a request for them to be evaluated for parole and no parole and all of that. So it's sounding really good for the Menendez brothers. And I'm very happy about it. We're going to cover it here. If you missed the press conference, the first press conference, I covered it. And then we covered the opening statements from the trial of 1993. We're going back to the past and we're going to start the trial from the beginning. So we did opening statements from 1993, and now we're going to do from prosecution and defense, and now we're going to do Lyle's opening statements. So we're going back to 1993. Hey, Kat. Thanks. Thanks for being here, you guys. We are now YouTube partners. I know. Wow. I'm very excited about it. So I'm going to share my screen. I know. I appreciate you guys for being here and supporting your girl. Make sure, you do all the good things. Hit the like button, subscribe, all of that. The YouTube streets are wild, there's a lot going on. But I'm here for true crime. So Funky. Stop, Funky. What's up, Funky? Thank you for being here. Anyways, if you guys can hit that like button, like I said, we are now YouTube partners, so I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited to be here and being a voice for the voiceless, mental health. We're gonna get onto all of that. I have a lot of good stuff coming up. Guest cases, phone calls. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It's good. Anyways, all right. So a blast from the past. Grab your popcorn. We're going back to 1993, Lyle Menendez opening statements. We covered prosecution and defense already. Go back and watch that live. Mo! I'm sorry if I just blew your guys' eardrums out, Mo. You did not. Mo, you're the first person to give me a super chat. Like, I love you, girl. You're so sweet. Unreal. 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 I appreciate you very much. Very much so. That's awesome. Thanks, Mo. You made like my month, honestly. I'm so appreciative. And I'm so glad you're here. And you're my girl. I see you in other chats. You already know. But anyways, I appreciate you, Mo. Thank you very much for that. Anyways, so we're going back to 1993. So I was like a couple years old then. Hey Jojo, it's good to see you. But I've really been enjoying this trial. I feel like it's a different perspective, and we're seeing this case play out in front of us in 2024. We must take that into account, right? And then also, I want to speak on like SA. I feel like people don't like to talk about that subject and that topic, but I welcome that. Survivors of it, people who know family member, like all across the board. I'm here for victims of that. And I think that they should be free. I think the Menendez brothers should be free at this point. So I'm going to play, like I said, opening statements, prosecution and defense. I already have up the newest the first press conference I have up. I might be covering the second one, but I wanted to continue my series on the trial from 1993. So tonight we're going to be listening to Lyle Menendez opening statements. It's not as long as the first one we saw. So let me know if you can see it.
All right, I've read
Welcome,
the
everyone.
Transcripts of those conversations. I have also listened to the tapes. The tape recordings, unfortunately, were of a little bit of a slow speed, so that the tapes were not the greatest sound quality, but I was able to hear them. And I'm ready to hear further argument, if any, by either side.
We're prepared to submit.
All right, the court recalls the position of the prosecution that this evidence...
Also, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm going to interrupt. It's commentary here. That's why I say that. Can we appreciate the 1993 vibes, the courtroom? Yes. I appreciate you, Mo. You are my first.
This is not being offered for the truth of the matter asserted in it, but rather to show the existence of a preconceived plan by the two defendants to commit murder and to plant a false trail of evidence indicating others committed the crime. And that is precisely what occurred in People versus Noguera, �NOGUERA at 4 Cal 4th 599, 1992 case decided by the California Supreme Court, which admitted that evidence. And that was the theory of its admissibility, that it was not offered for the truth of the matter asserted, but it was hearsay, or was not hearsay, rather, and therefore was not subject to hearsay objections. And likewise, in this situation, the evidence is not being offered for the truth and therefore is not hearsay and would be received for the purpose of establishing or at least...
Tipsy, my girl Tipsy. Tipsy has been a huge part of all of this. So shout out to Tipsy. She's an amazing friend. She's amazing. Period. Thanks, girl. It's not the time to sit here and cry. But I appreciate you guys, all of you. Tipsy, Fem, Mo. Happy birthday, Fem. Fem's a great friend of the channel. I got plans to rage tonight, so I'm literally about to file. You should. It's your birthday. Happy birthday, my girl. You've been a great friend to me, and I hope that, I can be as good a friend as you've been to me, truly. So happy birthday.
On the people's theory, establishing that there was a preconceived plan by the two declarant defendants to commit the murder and thereafter prepare a false account of what had transpired. Therefore, on that theory, the court will admit the statement of each defendant before both juries. And the analysis that I've just gone through would apply equally to the 9/11 phone call being admitted before the jury of Erik Menendez. All right, anything else now on any matters before we proceed?
No.
All right, then let us proceed with the opening statement of the parties involving the case of People versus Joseph Lyle Menendez. Is it the desire of counsel and defendant Erik Menendez to be in court during that?
Yes, Your Honor.
I agree, Michelle.
All right, any objection by the prosecution to that? All right, if all the jurors are present, let's have them out and we'll proceed. All right, we have all the jurors in the courtroom. This is a case of People versus Joseph Lyle Menendez, and the jurors are all back. Welcome. Good morning. I'll be discussing a few things with you before we get started. First of all, let me tell you a little bit about today's proceedings, and then we'll get right into them. When you were seated here, I know there was a little uncertainty as to where you're supposed to be seated because many of you recall your positions in the courtroom in the 7th floor during jury selection. So I know there's a little confusion, but I think you'll settle in and become acquainted with the surroundings here. And what is going to happen today is that you will be hearing the opening statements in the case of People versus Joseph Lyle Menendez. And as I've indicated to you before, and I'll remind you now and throughout the trial, your concern is to decide the case of People versus Joseph Lyle Menendez, and only that case. There will be another jury that will be in court that will deal with the case of the co-defendant, 𝐓𝐿 Menendez. He is in court today, and you have not seen him before in these proceedings. He is the gentleman. I'll ask you to stand, Mr. Menendez. This is 𝐓𝐿 Menendez. He is the co-defendant. Thank you, sir. And the other jury will be the jury that decides his case. Your job, as I've indicated, is to decide the case of Joseph Lyle Menendez.
It's right after watching the press conference today. It's like we know now that they might be able to go free. So now we're going back in time. How hard is that, right? I feel for them. I feel for them. Fem says, "Oh, Fem, we love you. I wish we could have a party, a birthday party." I don't recall why it took years to get to trial. Cap. Money? Money. Money. Their father was very powerful. We're seeing it with the Diddy stuff, right? I'm outraged. Hey, Avi. Thanks for being here tonight. We're going a blast from the past. We're going back to 1993. This is just Lyle's opening statement. So you have to go back. I covered the first press conference, and then we started my series of the Menendez trials. I'm covering it deeply. I have a lot of documents. We're going to cover the whole trial. The first trial. The second trial, they were not able to televise that. So I only have the transcript, which isn't very fun to read because it's like thousands and thousands of pages, but I do want to cover the first trial. I think it's important. I saw some comments earlier, like stuff was left out of the second trial. Yeah. We see a psychologist in this case who's, in my opinion, allegedly, everything that's said on this channel is just my opinion. I am not a lawyer, or, you know, like a court representative, but I feel like a lot was left out, and I don't think it's right. So I'm very glad to be covering this. We're doing it all the way back from the beginning. This is Lyle
other
Menendez.
People at council table whom you've not met before are
my beautiful Jessica Jennifer's here.
Erik Menendez's lawyers, and I'll introduce you to them.
Hey, Elsie.
First of all, Ms. Leslie Abramson and Ms.
Good
Marsha
vibes
Morrissey.
tonight. I like it. Guilty of crime in the house.
The other jury is not present yet today. They will be here later, and they will be hearing the opening statement in regards to the
We're
case
covering
of,
it all, baby.
𝐓𝐿 Menendez. And when both
Until the
juries
very
are in
end.
the courtroom, as I've
We're in
indicated
it.
to you before, one jury will be in the jury
in a
box.
relationship
The
now.
other jury will be in the middle section of the courtroom here. At this point, the middle section is being occupied by the public. During the trial, we'll have, for times when both juries are in the courtroom, and that'll be most of the trial, the center section will be occupied by jurors. And periodically during the trial, I'll move you from the jury box into the audience and switch you back and forth, probably on a weekly basis, just so that each jury has equal opportunity to have the jury box. Today, for the opening statements of the co-defendant, you will not be here. You will, I'll send you away during the time the opening statements are made for the defendant Erik Menendez, rather, and when that happens, the other jury will be seated in the jury box. You have these badges and also these little
I haven't watched it, AV.
gold stars. Not that we're praising you already, but we hope that you'll earn these gold stars throughout the trial. And the reason we have those gold stars is that it assists us to identify you as the jury involved in the case of Joseph Lyle Menendez. The other defendant jury has a blue sticker on their badges so that those jurors can be distinguished from you. It helps us in distinguishing them, and also it should help you. As I indicated during the early stages of jury selection, it's very important that you make your decisions based only on the evidence presented to you in the case of Joseph Lyle Menendez. So it's very important that you not have any contact with the other jurors involved in the case of the co-defendant. So when you see a juror in the hallway or elevator or anywhere around who has one of those blue stickers, it'll be a smaller sticker than yours, but it'll be blue. You'll know that that is a juror for the co-defendant, and you should have no contact with them. They're very nice people, and I'm sure that you'd enjoy speaking with them, but during the time this trial is ongoing, you must not have any contact with them whatsoever. It's very important that that rule is followed. And as I've also indicated, it's very important that you not talk to anybody at all about this case while it's ongoing. The only time you can talk to anybody is when the 12 jurors go into the jury room to decide the case, and that won't happen until all the evidence has been presented and the lawyers argue the case to the jury and I give you the legal instructions. Then you go in and talk about it for the first time. And also, to go over something else that's very critical here, it's very important that you not be exposed to anything outside the courtroom that has anything to do with this case, whether it's news coverage, conversations, discussions, overhearing what somebody else might say, anything. It's very important that you make your decision based only on what happens in the courtroom and my instructions on the law. So let me ask this question of all 18 of you, and it's not meant to put anybody on the spot, and if you feel that you'd be more comfortable answering it in writing, you can write me a note later this morning. Have any of you been exposed to anything about this case, whether it's in news coverage, conversations, overhearing something, anything, since you were last in court? Okay, and I say if anybody has, I would ask that you put it in a note to me as soon as that happens, whether it's today or any other day during the course of the trial, and periodically I'll be checking with you so that we can determine if anyone has had any problems. So let me move on here then and talk about some other matters. This case, as we've been aware by the nature of our earlier discussions during jury selection, this case has received quite a bit of news coverage, and it will throughout the trial. And it's very important that you follow my instruction not to look at any of the news coverage or be exposed to it in any way. It requires a lot of effort on your part, and I appreciate the amount of effort you're putting into it, and it'll have to be done throughout the trial. Occasionally,
Judge, I don't
jurors have the temptation to, I've just been discussing with you and jurors who have, during the course of a trial that has received some publicity, gone out and cut out newspaper articles and that sort of thing. And what happens is that we find out about it during the course of the trial, and I can recall a specific instance where an individual was doing that, and we found out about it during the course of the trial, and that juror was obviously in a lot of trouble for violating my order and instruction to the jury, and in addition to being in a lot of trouble, had to be excused from the jury. So it's very important that you not have any exposure to any material in the news coverage, whether it's in newspapers, magazines, TV, or radio. At this point, the lawyers will be making opening statements to the jury, and let me just remind you that
Oh my God, you guys are gonna hate me, but don't hate me. You guys are gonna hate me. Wait. Okay, never mind. You're not gonna hate me. I thought I was playing the wrong video. You're like, what? Oh my gosh. I thought I was playing the video from last week. I was like, please don't come for me. I'm trying. Not making fun, but I don't understand why you don't shave the rest. Oh, funky. Anyway, shout out to Fem in the chat. Happy birthday, Fem. Millie's a mess. I'm a mess. A mess. Whatever. I'm not gonna pretend to be something I'm not. Period. All right, let's get back to this. I was tripping. I was like, am I doing a repeat? Am I doing a repeat?
there will be, throughout the trial, a television camera in the courtroom. It's not a camera that is going to focus on you in any way. The
I wanna
rules
hear
are that
Lyle.
the camera cannot focus on the jurors and cannot photograph the jurors. There will be
All right,
a
let me-
still photographer occasionally in the...
I'm gonna fast forward a little bit.
No, it's a good idea. No, we can't do that. It's a good idea, but yeah, but we can't do that. Good try. It might very well be in time that will be something that we can do, but right now we can't do that. We have to rely upon your own note-taking. If you want to take notes, some jurors don't take notes at all. It's up to you. If you want to take notes, just remember the court reporters, they're busily taking down every word that's being said. Okay,
Yeah.
now opening statements by the prosecution.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good morning. I'm going to repeat exactly what the judge just told you because it's an important legal concept. What I'm going to outline here in the next 20 minutes to half an hour is an overview of what the people anticipate the evidence will show. But what I'm going to tell you is not evidence. It's merely an aid so that when you hear the evidence as we present it, you have some sort of context into which to place it so it doesn't come to you in a vacuum. And this is what the people believe the evidence will show. On August the 20th of 1989, at approximately 11:47 p.m., Beverly Hills Police Dispatcher Christina Nye received a 911 call at the police station. On the line was Lyle Menendez, who sounded hysterical, reporting that, quote, "Someone shot my mom and my dad," end quote. You will hear that 911 tape, and you will hear the emotion manifested in that phone call. Police officers from the Beverly Hills Police Department arrived at the scene, 722 North Elm Drive, in under 5 minutes. Police Officer Michael Butkus and Sergeant Kirk West, both of the Beverly Hills Police Department, will testify in this case. Officer Butkus arrived at the scene first. He approached the house, and shortly thereafter, he heard screaming as the two defendants, Erik Menendez and Lyle Menendez, came running out the front door. Officer Butkus will describe the demeanor of the defendants that night in their first contact with the police. Sergeant West was one of the last units to arrive at the scene in response to the initial radio dispatch. Sergeant West and other officers entered the house to determine what had happened and to determine if the killers were still inside of the house. Sergeant West will describe his discovery of the bodies of 𝐒𝐨𝐤 Menendez and Mary Louise Menendez inside of the family room of the Menendez home that night. Sergeant West determined that both victims were dead, and he also noticed that pellet patterns he observed in the room indicated to him that a shotgun had been used in the killings. Sergeant West is familiar with shotguns, and he did not notice any visual signs of shotgun smoke, nor did he smell any shotgun smoke in the room. Neither did he see any signs of expended shotgun shells. He also noticed that both the television set and the lights were on inside of that room where the bodies were found. The police proceeded through the house, and Sergeant West noticed that there were 2 rifles inside a closet in a bedroom upstairs. Sergeant West also searched a guest house in the back of the Menendez property. The lights were on inside of the guest house, and its front door was open. No other weapons were noticed or recovered at the crime scene that night, aside from the 2 rifles seen in the upstairs closet by Sergeant West. Both of the defendants were taken to the police station to be interviewed. The house was now off limits while the police and coroner's personnel began the grim task of examining the Menendez home and its contents. At 1:42 a.m., 2 hours after the 911 call, Sergeant Thomas Edmonds, also of the Beverly Hills Police Department, spoke with Lyle Menendez to find out what he knew about the events of that evening and who might have committed this crime. Lyle Menendez told Sergeant Edmonds that he and his brother had gone to the movies that night at Century Plaza, and then had gone to the Santa Monica Civic Center to attend a food and wine tasting function. Lyle Menendez told Sergeant Edmonds that he was supposed to meet a friend of his by the name of Perry Berman at the Santa Monica Civic Center. Lyle Menendez told Sergeant Edmonds that he and his brother had missed Mr. Berman at the Santa Monica Civic Center, and so Lyle Menendez called Mr. Berman from a pay phone at the Civic Center. Lyle Menendez used a U.S. Sprint calling card registered to his father, 𝐒𝐨 Menendez, and the records of that transaction show 2 phone calls made to Perry Berman from a pay phone at the Santa Monica Civic at 11:07 and 11:15 p.m. Lyle Menendez went on to tell Sergeant Edmonds that during these 2 telephone calls, he arranged to meet Perry Berman at a restaurant in Beverly Hills instead that night. Lyle Menendez continued and told Sergeant Edmonds that he and his brother returned home to pick up some sort of identification for Erik Menendez, which would enable him to enter a bar should they and Perry Berman decide to go for drinks. Lyle Menendez told Sergeant Edmonds that the defendants entered the house, found their parents, and called the police. Lyle Menendez specifically mentioned the smell of smoke in reference to entering the room where his parents' bodies were found. Contrast this with the statement of Sergeant West that when he entered the family room, he neither saw nor smelled smoke. Sergeant Edmonds asked Lyle Menendez if he had any idea as to who would have done this crime. Lyle Menendez opined that his father would probably be the reason for the murders, that it would have been business-related, and that some of the people affiliated with his father's business were seedy. Lyle Menendez also told Sergeant Edmonds that he knew that there were 2 rifles inside of the house and that his mother had just purchased one of them. Lyle Menendez went on to say that he called the police shortly after discovering his parents' bodies and that the police came pretty quickly. In describing the crime scene, Lyle Menendez told Sergeant Edmonds the following: It doesn't seem like they heard anything because they were on the couch, and my dad is usually pretty deaf to hear something, so when he gets up right away, and he continued on, so I was really surprised that he was sitting on the couch like that. My mother was on the floor, like she was trying to get away or something.
What?
Sergeant Edmonds next spoke to Erik Menendez during those early morning hours. Erik Menendez, too, told Sergeant Edmonds that he and his brother had gone to the movies that night and had gotten lost going to Santa Monica to see Perry Berman. A neighbor of the Menendezes who lives 2 doors south of their home will testify that she heard popping noises that night at around 10 p.m., almost 2 hours before the 911 call made by Lyle Menendez. This neighbor thought the noises were made by firecrackers, and so she dissuaded her son from calling the police. When detectives arrived at the crime scene, they too saw the bodies discovered by Sergeant West. The detectives also saw that there were no expended shotgun shells in the room where the murders had occurred. Perry Berman will be a witness in this case. He is the young man who was to meet the Menendez brothers at the Santa Monica Civic Center. He will tell you that on the afternoon before the killings, that is, the afternoon of August the 20th, he arrived home to find a message on his answering machine from Lyle Menendez. When he finally reached Lyle Menendez by phone, Lyle Menendez wanted to see him that night. Perry Berman had already made plans to go to the food and wine tasting event in Santa Monica, but he invited Lyle Menendez to join Perry and a friend of his with whom he had already made plans. Perry Berman will tell you that he did not see Lyle Menendez in Santa Monica, and he went home to bed. Around 11 o'clock that night, Mr. Berman received a telephone call from Lyle Menendez, who urged him to meet with the Menendez brothers at their parents' home in Beverly Hills, whereupon they would go somewhere else to eat. Not wanting to disturb the Menendez parents, Perry Berman agreed to meet Lyle Menendez at the Cheesecake Factory in Beverly Hills, which is a restaurant. Mr. Berman dressed, went to the Cheesecake Factory, and waited for a half hour for the defendants to arrive. While there, the night silence was broken by the sound of sirens, and after concluding that the brothers were not going to show up, Mr. Berman went towards the Menendez home. When he got there, he saw the police, whose sirens he had heard while waiting at the restaurant. Forensic criminalists from the Sheriff's Department will testify about some of the conclusions which can and cannot be made from looking at the photographs of the crime scene in this case. A doctor from the coroner's office who performed the autopsies on Mr. and Mrs. Menendez will describe the wounds which ended the lives of these victims. The coroner's representative will tell you that Mr. Menendez had 5 shotgun wounds, the major one being an entrance wound to the back of Mr. Menendez's head. He will also tell you that Mrs. Menendez had 10 separate shotgun wounds, some of which could have been caused by the same blast. An expert on firearms will testify as to the workings of a shotgun, shotgun pellet patterns, and other things specific to this crime scene. The head of the...
I need to pause because I need that hairband. I need to say hi to everyone. My beautiful Stella. I saw Stella in here. Avie. I saw my girl Avie. Don't worry. I'm not watching it. I'm not cheating. Jojo. Yes, Funky. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for being here. We are YouTube partners tonight. Yay! Shout out to you guys. Thank you guys for all the support. Welcome to my channel. There's no bullshit here. We just cover true crime. We don't condone bullying. We don't condone victim blaming. We're real here. Might get me into trouble, but we're here. We're real.
The Sheriff's Serology Department will tell you that Jose Menendez was not killed precisely in the position in which you will see him in the photographs, due to the pooling of blood on the family sofa. He will also tell you what can and cannot be said about this crime scene. Shortly after the killings, Lyle Menendez began to spend money, a lot of money. On Thursday, August the 24th, he, in the company of his brother, purchased 3 Rolex watches and some money clips. On September the 8th of 1989, 19 days after the killings, a life insurance policy which had been procured earlier by Jose Menendez was paid to the defendants. The policy cumulatively was for $650,000, and over a period of a week between September the 8th and September the 15th, $325,000 was paid out to each defendant. Lyle Menendez returned to the Princeton, New Jersey area after a memorial service for his parents, which was held in Los Angeles on August the 25th of 1989. Lyle Menendez had been a student at Princeton University in the spring of 1989, and the family had lived in the township of Princeton before moving to California earlier. During the initial few days of his stay in Princeton, Lyle Menendez hired bodyguards to guard him. Lyle Menendez and his bodyguards traveled around Princeton in limousines during this period. Richard 𝐒𝐻𝐿𝐵 was hired as one of those bodyguards. He will testify in this case, and Mr. 𝐒𝐻𝐿𝐵 will tell you that one day he accompanied Lyle Menendez to the airport so that Lyle Menendez could make a quick trip from the East Coast to the West Coast. You will learn from other evidence that once in Los Angeles, Lyle Menendez hired a computer expert named Howard Whitkin to access the Menendez family's home computer. Lyle Menendez had Howard Whitkin, the computer expert, look through the family's computer menu for 4 different headings. Those headings were entitled Eric, Will, Lyle, and Menendez. Mr. Whitkin found files with 3 of these headings, but there was no information of any use in those computer files. Lyle Menendez asked Mr. Whitkin to erase the entire computer so that he could sell the computer. Mr. Whitkin did so and was paid with a check drawn on the account of Jose Menendez for $150.
Oh, so Jose Menendez paid people off, huh? Jojo, I appreciate you for that. You're very sweet. My Jojo. My beautiful Jojo. Off the subject, but I had... Okay, so the father has been paying people off. Okay, we got it.
The computer was erased by Mr. Whitkin on August the 31st, 1989, 11 days after the deaths of Mr. and Mrs. Menendez. Mr. 𝐒𝐻𝐤𝐲 will also tell you that he had a conversation with Lyle Menendez, during which Lyle Menendez asked him if ballistics evidence could be used to trace an expended shotgun shell to a particular weapon. Mr. 𝐒𝐻𝐤𝐲 told him no. After erasing the computer, Lyle Menendez returned to Princeton the same day. Sometime after the computer's erasure, Lyle Menendez had a conversation with his best friend, Glenn Stevens. Mr. Stevens was a student at Princeton University in the fall of 1989 and had been enrolled with Lyle Menendez during the spring semester of 1989, several months before. Lyle Menendez told his best friend, Glenn Stevens, after the killings, that Lyle's uncle Carlos had found something in the family computer which was under one of 3 headings. Lyle Menendez told Glenn Stevens that Lyle Menendez's father had been upset with him and that if there was a new will in the computer, he, Lyle, might not be in it. Lyle Menendez told him that
Why?
the will that the family was aware of, that is, the other relatives in the family, had left everything to Lyle Menendez and his brother. Lyle Menendez told Mr. Stevens that the person he had hired to erase the computer was some little Jewish guy, that no one would ever be able to find him. On December the 5th of 1989, several months now after the murders, the police found Mr. 𝐓𝐡𝐚𝐬𝐧𝐤. They served a search warrant at 722 North Elm Drive and recovered the family's computer. Alongside the computer was a receipt for services rendered dated August the 31st, 1989. And this receipt led the police to the discovery of Mr. 𝐓𝐡𝐚𝐬𝐧𝐤. On September the 17th, now going backwards, but September the 17th, less than a month after the killings, Beverly Hills police detectives interviewed Lyle Menendez at the home of one of his relatives in New Jersey.
A month after?
The conversation dealt with various habits of the victims, with the activities of the Menendez family the weekend of the killings, possible motives for the killings, and the activities of the defendants on the evening of the killings. Lyle Menendez told the police that the night before the killings, which would have been Saturday, August the 19th, the Menendez family had gone night fishing and had gotten home about 12:30 a.m. early on Sunday morning. He told the police that he and his brother went to the movies the night of the killings, that he and his brother went to see License to Kill, but that it was sold out, and so they saw Batman instead, and it was a movie they had both seen previously. After the movie, Lyle Menendez and his brother, in his brother's car and with his brother driving, had gone to Santa Monica to meet Perry Berman, and they had gotten lost along the way. Lyle Menendez explained to the detectives that he hadn't seen Mr. Berman in 3 weeks prior to the killings, that he had a lot of things going on that he wanted to talk to Mr. Berman about, and that, quote, I had to go see him, unquote. He also acknowledged that Perry Berman worked on Monday, that he'd called him at about 11 or 11:15 to meet at the Cheesecake Factory, and Lyle acknowledged that this was his idea. He explained that he and his brother went back to the house to get phony ID so that his brother could go drink if necessary, which is when they found their parents. Lyle Menendez again mentioned the smoke to the detectives on September the 17th. He mentioned the smoke that he saw in the room upon the discovery of his parents' bodies. He said the police were called right away and arrived right away. Lyle Menendez was asked by the detectives about his parents' sleeping habits, particularly about whether they would fall asleep while watching television. Lyle Menendez told the detectives that his father would fall asleep in a movie just like that, but that his mother had insomnia, so whether or not she would fall asleep was a matter of how tired she was. He also said that his father was not easily awakened, but that his mother awoke easily. Lyle Menendez also told the police that the maid had Saturdays and Sunday nights off. In another portion of the discussion, Lyle Menendez was comforted by the detectives that both of his parents had not suffered and had died instantaneously. Lyle Menendez and the detectives discussed possible motives for the killings, and the subject turned to Jose Menendez's business dealings. Lyle Menendez told the police that his father had received threats from people. He discussed the possibility that his parents' deaths were linked to organized crime, and also discussed his own needs for a bodyguard because he was being followed. Lyle Menendez made the statement that, quote, "it's pretty difficult to get good security," unquote. But from what we now know, this hint that his own life might have been in danger because of his parents' killings was a lie. In response to the police questions about any problems that Lyle might have had with his parents, Lyle Menendez told the police that he and his mother had recently quarreled over the fact that he had locked himself out of the family home and he had to wake his mother to get inside, a fairly trivial incident. He said that he had no other problems with his parents.
Pause. How the connections to what we're seeing now, right? Powerful people in the industry. Lyle felt like he couldn't get bodyguards to be on his side when his father was a very powerful executive and had the money and the wealth. You think back to 1993, where a lot of like 𝐒𝐤𝐬𝐫𝐞 drug stuff was like taboo, right? Even for me growing up as a Latina, like a lot of those topics were very like not talked about. And so I feel like them being the children of a very powerful person and they can't even get bodyguards, like the level of power and abuse, right? It's sad, truly.
While the police were there questioning Lyle Menendez, they noticed that he was wearing a gold Rolex watch, and he confirmed that he had purchased it shortly before his parents' memorial service, which the evidence will show was on August the 25th. He also indicated that he had charged the Rolex watch on his father's credit card. By March of 1990, 6.5 months after the killings, the police were getting ready to make arrests for the murders of Jose and Mary Louise Menendez. Around this time, Glenn Stevens, Lyle's best friend from Princeton, flew from Princeton to Los Angeles with Lyle Menendez and another Princeton student named Hayden Rogers. Once in Los Angeles, Lyle Menendez told Glenn Stevens that he, Lyle, had called back east to the East Coast and had discovered that the Beverly Hills police detectives had been there recently. Glenn Stevens will describe Lyle as being made nervous by this. At this time, Lyle took approximately $2,000 out of his pocket and divided it between Glenn Stevens and Mr. Rogers. Lyle Menendez told Glenn Stevens that, should anything happen to him, Mr. Stevens should contact Lyle Menendez's attorney. Lyle Menendez also told Mr. Stevens that there were only two people who knew everything: his attorney and a man named Dr. 𝐒𝐤𝐳. Lyle Menendez explained to Glenn Stevens that Dr. 𝐒𝐤𝐳 had some cassette tapes in a safety deposit box.
Hey, Tony, good
and
to see you.
that if the police ever got their hands on those tapes, he, Lyle Menendez, would be, and I apologize, fucked.
Hey, Tony, good to see you. Thanks for being here. I agree. I don't think they their parents for money. No, they already knew what they could have, and I just feel like money wasn't that wasn't a thing here for them. I really don't.
On March the 8th of 1990, the police executed a search warrant at the home of Dr. 𝐒𝐤𝐳. The police searched a safety deposit box belonging to Dr. 𝐒𝐤𝐳 and obtained a cassette tape which contained Dr. 𝐒𝐤𝐳's verbal notes of
Funky.
2 psychological sessions he had
I don't
had
know what you guys are
with
talking
both
about.
Erik and Lyle Menendez. Lyle Menendez was arrested the same day by the Beverly Hills Police Department for the murders of his parents. Lyle Menendez's prediction to Glenn Stevens as to what would happen to him if the police got their hands on the 𝐒𝐤𝐳 tape had come true. The shotguns used in the murders were never recovered. After searching Dr. 𝐒𝐤𝐳's safety deposit box, the police were led to the San Diego area in search of records which would show the purchase of shotguns. After visiting several stores, the police went to a Big 5 sporting goods store. In searching the records, they discovered firearms purchase records in the name of a man named Donovan Goodrow. Early on in the investigation, in September, the police had traveled back east to interview family and friends of the victims and the defendants. During this visit, the police confirmed that Lyle Menendez had a friend named Donovan Goodrow, who lived on the East Coast. When the police saw Donovan Goudreau's name on the purchase records for 2 shotguns in San Diego, which were purchased 2 days before the killings on August the 18th, 1989, the police knew that they had hit pay dirt. Donovan Goudreau will tell you that on August the 18th, 1989, 2 days before the Menendez killings, he was not in San Diego buying 2 shotguns, but instead was working in a restaurant in the city of New York. Mr. Goudreau will also tell you that he had been a roommate of Lyle Menendez's in the spring of 1989 at Princeton University, although he himself was not a student at Princeton University.
Beautiful, Stella.
Lyle Menendez kicked Mr. Goudreau out of his room. He no longer wished Mr. Goudreau to be his roommate. And in approximately May of 1989, Mr. Goudreau left for New York City. Mr. Goudreau will also tell you that he discovered that his wallet and identification were missing when he traveled to New York. Glenn Stevens will tell you that Lyle Menendez bragged to Glenn Stevens that he had stolen Mr. Goudreau's wallet in order to get back at Mr. Goudreau because Lyle Menendez suspected that Donovan Goudreau had stolen money from Lyle Menendez. Lyle Menendez also indicated that he would forge Mr. Goudreau's signature to obtain this retribution. Amanda Adams Greer was working at the Big 5 sporting goods store on August the 18th. She will explain to you the various forms that were filled out to complete the purchase, and you will see the name Donovan Goudreau on those forms. You will also see a copy of his California driver's license, which was in his possession before he left Princeton, and you will see that Mr. Goudreau's license number is also on the firearms transaction forms, filled out in part by one of the brothers and in part by Ms. Greer. You will also learn that the address given on the form, that is the firearms transaction form, is a location which is unknown to Mr. Goudreau and is in fact an address which does not exist within the San Diego area. Ms. Greer, the firearms saleswoman, will also tell you that the purchase was made with cash and that she did not sell any ammunition when she sold the 2 shotguns. A handwriting examiner from the district attorney's office will testify about the firearms transaction forms. He will tell you that he cannot be 100% sure of whose writing appears on the forms, mainly because there's not enough handwriting on the firearms transaction forms to make a comparison.
Wait, he can't tell whose writing is on that form. With the firearm that they got charged with using. What?
But between the signatures of Donovan
Free the
Goudreau,
Menendez brothers.
the handwriting of Lyle Menendez, and the handwriting of Erik Menendez, the expert will tell you that the signature on the firearms transaction forms was most likely made by Erik Menendez. He will also tell you that the name Goudreau on those firearms forms is misspelled. In the summer of 1990, Lyle Menendez was ordered by a judge to provide a handwriting sample for the purpose of making comparisons for this handwriting examiner. He refused to provide a sample of his handwriting. In June of 1990, when he made this refusal, there was no way he could have known that the handwriting examiner could not make a 100% comparison because the handwriting examiner did not perform his comparison until 1992. In spite of Lyle Menendez's refusal to provide a handwriting sample, other samples of his writing were obtained in this case. I have mentioned Dr. 𝐒𝐤, the therapist whose tape led to the arrest of Lyle Menendez. You will hear testimony from Dr. 𝐒𝐤, and he will tell you the following.
Okay, that testimony by Dr. 𝐒𝐤, it is so good. Wait till you see it here. We're probably going to watch it this weekend. There's a few more parts before we get to that. Guilty of Crime says, do you think they will get out? I hope so. I don't know. Maybe they'll have a few more years left. I don't know. I hope they get left out. I think 30 something years, 35, 30 is enough. I don't know. I really don't know about that, Guilty.
On the evening of October the 31st, 1989,
I have mixed
approximately
feelings.
2 months after the killings, and also the night of Halloween,
I know.
Dr. 𝐒𝐤
Politics.
was in his office, and he called Lyle Menendez at home and asked him to come to the office.
I hope so.
When Lyle Menendez got there, his brother Erik Menendez and Dr. 𝐒𝐲 were already there. Dr. 𝐒𝐲 informed Lyle Menendez at that time that Erik Menendez had confessed that Erik had murdered his parents. Lyle Menendez became extremely agitated and informed those present that Erik's confession was very stupid and that now it was no longer a perfect murder. Lyle Menendez was fearful that Dr. 𝐒𝐲 would tell someone of the brothers' participation in the killings, that he, Lyle Menendez, did not want anyone looking over his shoulder, and that is why he had killed his parents. Erik Menendez left this session before Lyle Menendez, and then Lyle Menendez left. 2 days later, on November the 2nd of 1989, the brothers again visited Dr. 𝐒𝐲. At the beginning of the session, Dr. 𝐒𝐲 explained to Lyle Menendez why it was necessary for Erik Menendez to confess the murders to Dr. 𝐒𝐲. Dr. 𝐒𝐲 explained that he was keeping notes of the sessions, and Lyle Menendez was alarmed by this. Dr. 𝐒𝐲 told the brothers that notes of those sessions were being kept in a safety deposit box, and that Dr. 𝐒𝐲 had given keys to this box to several attorneys, and that he, Dr. 𝐒𝐲, had instructed these attorneys to open the safety deposit box if he should die mysteriously. This was Dr. 𝐒𝐲's life insurance policy.
What?
Dr. 𝐒𝐲 explained to Lyle Menendez that he and his brother should attempt to be treated psychologically for whatever it was that had caused them to kill their parents. Lyle Menendez told Dr. 𝐒𝐲 that there really wasn't anything to work on because what had caused him to commit murder was no longer here. He had killed them both. During the second conversation on November the 2nd, the defendants told Dr. 𝐒𝐲 that they killed their father because he controlled them and made them feel inferior, while preaching morality to them. They went on to acknowledge that they saw their father as being basically a moral person. Dr. 𝐒𝐲 asked them why they had killed their mother. The gist of what Dr. 𝐒𝐲 will tell you that they told him is that Mrs. Menendez was killed because the brothers had made such a good plan to kill their father, and the plan included their mother, that they just had to keep her in the plan. According to Dr. 𝐒𝐲, the brothers considered not killing their mother, but decided to go ahead anyway with her killing because their plan was too perfect to alter.
I don't buy that. Sorry. When we see Dr. 𝐒𝐲's testimony in like another episode or two, I will let you guys be the judgment of that, but I don't know. I don't know. Seems like Dr. 𝐒𝐲 was a good family friend.
Besides, they told
In
Dr.
my
𝐒𝐲
opinion.
their mother had been depressed lately and probably would have been unable to live without their father anyway. During the rest of the November 2nd session, the brothers were entranced with the perfection of the crime that they had committed. Lyle expressed sadness at having killed his mother, but acknowledged that he had fired the shots which, in the end, had killed her. Dr. 𝐒𝐲 asked Lyle Menendez if he felt guilty about inheriting millions of dollars from his parents. Lyle Menendez laughed, but went on to explain that he had not committed the murders for money. Lyle Menendez told Dr. 𝐒𝐲 that his uncle had suspected that the family computer contained another will, which would have disinherited the brothers. Lyle explained to Dr. 𝐒𝐲 that he had arranged to have the computer's hard disk erased to avoid the possibility of a second will.
Is Kitty another Jen Soto? What do you guys think in the chat? I'm not here. I'm no legal representative. I'm not a lawyer. What do you think? Did Kitty turn the other way back in 1993? Did she ignore what was going on? Did she know? What do you think? What do you guys think? I'm curious. We're seeing it now in the Maddie Soto case. Is this the version of Jen Soto from 1993?
The defendants went on to tell Dr. 𝐒𝐲 that they killed their parents out of hatred and a desire to be free of their father's domination and impossible standards. The defendants did not tell Dr. 𝐒𝐲 during these two sessions that the killings were done in self-defense or that they had suffered any physical or sexual abuse. During the second session on November the 2nd, Lyle Menendez expressed concern that the notes that Dr. 𝐒𝐲 had kept never be revealed. Lyle told Dr. Menendez how embarrassing it would be if he were found out. Lyle Menendez joked to the doctor that if a robber ever tried to break into Dr. 𝐒𝐲's home and shoot him, He should be aware that the robber would probably be shot, and that when he looked up, he would probably see Lyle Menendez saying, "Have a good night's sleep, Jerry." Lyle Menendez had made an uneasy alliance with the man who held his secrets. The remainder of the November 2nd session dealt with the defendant's upcoming trip to Hawaii and where they should stay on the islands. It is anticipated that the people's case will take less than a month to present to you. During that time, we will prove to you that Lyle Menendez planned this murder, provided false identification for the purchase of 2 shotguns, set up an alibi, acquired ammunition, repeated the alibi to the police shortly after the crime, and then set off to spend the money which he had acquired through the killings of his parents. Based upon this evidence, it will become apparent that this murder was unlawful, unjustified, and wholly premeditated, and that it was accomplished through a conspiracy into which Lyle Menendez entered with his brother, and that but for a few mistakes they made, this was almost the perfect murder. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And there will be an opening statement by the defendant.
What do you guys think? What do you guys think about that headband? I need it in my life. Hey, Life Artist, thanks for being here. Yes, yes, we are now YouTube partners. Woohoo! I appreciate you guys. And I love you guys, all of you who are here. We're reviewing Menendez trials back to 1993. Yeah, we're going all the way back. We're covering all of it. And I have a couple legal documents I'm going to read in between. Tomorrow I'm going to read some legal documents, and I'm going to go back in time and reread some of the Menendez ones too that I got my hands on. So we're going to be covering this for sure. Deep diving.
As well, and we'll take
Deep
a
diving,
short break.
baby. I hope you brought your kiosk
Council
money.
has some material that they want to organize for the defendant's opening statement. So if you would all go back into the jury room, and we'll have you come out in 10 minutes, and we'll resume with the opening statements. Certainly. Yes, the jury has left the courtroom.
Oh, here's our girl.
Now, this would be a motion for a mistrial, or in the alternative that the court issue an admonition to the jury that the prosecutor has committed misconduct, and that that misconduct would call for a mistrial in the court. The instruction we're asking for is the one authorized by People v. Gold with 𝐂𝐤𝐤𝐿, and the basis for the mistrial motion, Your Honor, is that the prosecutor specifically indicated to the court both on June 17th and also yesterday that she would not mention during her opening statement evidence that there were pending issues as to the admissibility on them. The prosecutor breached that agreement at least 4 times. Number one, she mentioned a theft defense in relation to Mr. 𝐒𝐤𝐤 that the defense had a pending objection on. She mentioned a refusal by Lyle Menendez to submit to a court order for a handwriting exemplar that the defense has a pending objection on. She mentioned Dr. 𝐒𝐤𝐲's life insurance policy, which, as the court knows, the defense is objecting to anything in the nature of threats, and that's an indirect way of referring to the fact that Dr. 𝐒𝐤𝐲's life was being threatened. She mentioned that Lyle said he would kill a robber in a hypothetical situation where Dr. 𝐒𝐤𝐲's life was being threatened, which I think comes within our objection to the threat against Dr. 𝐒𝐤𝐲. She mentioned, for no apparent reason, the reference to the little Jewish guy, which, as the court knows, we objected to on the basis that it's inflammatory.
This guy is hard to hear.
Relevant to this case. So for all of those reasons, Your Honor, we'd ask for a mistrial, or in the alternative that the court give an admonition.
A mistrial.
All right, do the people wish to respond?
Your Honor, I think that the opening statement I gave was proper. As far as I told Ms. Lansing yesterday that I was going to talk about the handwriting refusals, and she said that was fine in a telephone conversation. As far as the references to Dr. 𝐒𝐤𝐲, I think I was extremely circumspect, and the court has indicated that spending evidence will be admissible, and I think that the counsel's objections are scurrilous.
Well, I don't think counsel has referred to the spending evidence in his list of objections. Regarding the theft of the identification from Mr. 𝐒𝐤𝐲, that was a subject of a motion by the defense. My recollection is that it has never been completely resolved. However, the court did indicate that the fact that false identification was used, and it was used in the purchase of a firearm, would be admissible. And the nature of the theft, in my view, is part of the overall manner in which the defendant came into possession of the wallet and the identification. So my view is that that incident would be admissible to establish how the defendant came into possession of the wallet and came to use the identification.
Mo says, what was the reason they gave for purchasing shotguns? Protection? Why did they need one? We saw it in the Micah Miller case, right? Which has been, from what it seems like, very hush-hush and shut down. Something I'm curious about, but yeah, I mean, what's behind all of that too, right? Do we have that footage? Probably not. I mean, I'm curious.
So the evidence itself would be admissible.
Why else would you buy a handgun
jury or
any firearm? For me personally, in my house, we have them for protection.
And in regards to the use of the exemplar, refusal to provide an exemplar, Ms. Lansing, did you wish to be heard on whether or not the prosecution gave you notice of that and you responded?
She did mention to me that she was going to use it. She's correct in her representation. I would add, though, that with regard to the last issue, I had spoken to her specifically about the issue. There are two issues with regard to the wallet, Mr. Dubois' wallet. One was the identification, which we knew she was going to mention. It was perfectly correct. I asked her specifically with regard to this other representation by Mr. Stevens that there was going to be some attempt to get some reimbursement from Mr. Boudreaux, and she said specifically she was not going to mention it. And she did mention it.
All right.
Judge, we withdraw the motion with respect to the handwriting refusal if that in fact is the case of Ms. Lansing.
All right.
She can be faulted for mentioning Ms. Lansing told her she could mention it.
All right.
Although I think the objection still stands, and the court judge will rule on it.
All right. The underlying objection, you mean?
Correct.
In regards to the reference by the prosecution, it seems to be innocuous in relationship to why the wallet was taken. The bottom line is the wallet was taken, it was a theft, and it was used to obtain the firearms. So it seems to me that reference to a payback of some sort for some alleged occurrence that had happened between the parties on some earlier occasion is innocuous and certainly is not grounds for a mistrial. The other reference to Dr. 𝐒𝐲𝐬 and the life insurance policy and the fact that a robber would be killed by Lyle Menendez if he was to enter 𝐒𝐲𝐬's house. Again, those were not specifically objected to by the defense. The threat evidence was identified specifically in our discussions, and my recollection was that neither of these were referred to by the defense as things that you objected to. There were specific threats that were mentioned, and they related to the initial conversation between Lyle Menendez and Dr. 𝐒𝐲𝐬, and Lyle Menendez exiting the office and making a remark to 𝐒𝐲𝐬. And then later on, at the next session, when 𝐒𝐲𝐬 spoke with both defendants, and there was reference to 𝐒𝐲𝐬 having watched as the two defendants were out their vehicle. Those were the two references I recall regarding threats, and nothing else was discussed. And so there has been no ruling as far as those specific things that the defense is objecting to at this point. So the prosecution has not violated any order of the court or ruling of the court or in any way done anything that would be grounds for a mistrial. And as far as description of Mr. 𝐒𝐤𝐤, I don't recall that being the subject of a motion or objection by the defense. And I don't, well, it might be buried somewhere, but it was never something that was brought up. I really have no recollection of it, ever having seen it. And it seems to be a rather innocuous remark, and one that was made by the defendant in description of an individual who was later identified, and perhaps part of the means of identification was the description provided by the defendant. So I don't find that these are grounds for a mistrial. I don't find it to be inflammatory or basis for a motion for mistrial. So the motions made by the defense, the court has considered them and denies a motion for mistrial. I find no basis for it, and no basis for further admonishment to the jury other than a reminder when they come out that these are just opening statements, not evidence, and the jury is not to consider them as evidence, and some of the things that mentioned by counsel in their opening statements might never be proved during the course of the trial. And if there are specific objections that you want to further address on any of these matters, we can do that before the evidence is introduced.
Your Honor, we would move in limine at this time to prohibit Mr. Kuriyama from skirting the lack of decision on the threat evidence motion by referring to other aspects of the material in Dr. 𝐒𝐻𝐤𝐾's tape and insinuating...
Well, let me stop you for a moment. There was a specific
Dr.
decision on the
𝐒𝐻𝐤's
threat
testimony
evidence, and
comes
the
up a lot.
decision related to specific threats, and those were the things that were articulated and ruled upon, and the defense never objected to these specific references that were referred to by the prosecution in the opening statement.
With all due respect, Your Honor, you have not ruled on threat evidence vis-a-vis Erik Menendez. It's entirely up in the air. And we submitted to you the entire transcript of Dr. 𝐒𝐻𝐤's tape notes for your perusal, and it was attached to our motion.
And what did you object to specifically rather than to the entirety of it?
Your Honor, we objected to all evidence that could be characterized as so-called threat evidence.
And who is supposed to make that decision as to what could be characterized as threat evidence?
Well, for one thing, Your Honor, I don't recall, but I don't have the materials in front of me, so I don't want to be committed. I don't recall this life insurance discussion. I think that is a characterization by Mrs. 𝐒𝐻𝐤. So it wasn't there to specifically object to. I think what she has done is taken the situation that she characterizes as threatening and simply watered it down in order to use some of the things that were said and to give the impression that this was a dangerous situation.
Okay, let me interrupt you. If you have specific objections to contents of 𝐒𝐻𝐤's testimony, then what you should do is identify those specific objections, talk with Mr. Kuriyama, determine whether or not he is going to offer that, and if he is, then we'll discuss it before the opening statement for your client.
I should also indicate no one called me yesterday to tell me what was in their opening statement. I have not agreed that the handwriting exemplar material can be commented.
Okay, again, we're now going to proceed with the opening statement for the defendant, Lyle Menendez. Will give counsel 5 minutes to get ready, and at 20 minutes to the hour, we'll start up. Mind you, ladies and gentlemen, in reference to the prosecution's opening statement and in reference to the defense opening statement, this is not evidence. This is just a preview of what the lawyers expect the evidence to be. Some things that they refer to during their opening statements might not even be introduced as evidence during the trial. It's just what they expect the evidence to be. All right, is the defense ready to proceed? All right, Ms. Lansing.
So if you missed part 1, we covered the defense and prosecution opening statements. Yeah, I don't know why they're not standing. Hey, Johnny, thanks for being here. Okay, so we're getting there. We're going to listen to this.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I've put some photographs up there. I'm never going to be able to get from here to there, so as I speak, I'm going to merely direct your attention to the board since I have a lack of space here. Menendez killed their parents. We're not disputing where it happened, how it happened, who did it. We're not disputing when it happened. The only thing that you are going to have to focus on
Lyle
in this
Menendez.
trial is
Opening
why it
statements.
happened. And the prosecution has suggested to you that it was done for money. It was done to commit the perfect crime. It was done possibly out of hatred. And what we will prove to you is it was done out of fear. You will be given a great deal of evidence to evaluate. In deciding whether you believe that this crime, that these children killed their parents for money, You will get an idea of what their life was like before. They were living in a Beverly Hills mansion. Lyle was attending Princeton University. He was driving the brand new Alfa Romeo he got for high school graduation. He'd had credit cards since he was 15 for both phone and to buy whatever he wanted. They had the most expensive tennis coaches. They took expensive vacations. And everyone who knew Lyle said he had, Lyle Menendez, knew he had all of the money that he needed. His father had been on a meteoric rise within the last couple of years, and things were only getting better. He
Fame?
was going to make more money the next year than he had the last, and more money the year after that. He was aggressive, he was talented, he was going to win at any cost. But his family was going with him wherever he went, and money was not going to be an issue. Lyle Menendez was going to be supported by, directed by, controlled by, and taken care of by his father for the rest of his
His
life.
abuser.
His
allegedly.
father had always picked his schools, his friends, tried to control his girlfriends, decided where he was going to work, what his future was going to be, and had talked of his plans to buy a compound in Florida in which there would be houses for not only Kitty and Jose Menendez, but one for Lyle and whomever he would marry, and one for Erik and whomever he would marry,
What?
and various other relatives. So there was no real concern that he was not going to have money and be taken care of all of his life. The prosecution is going to produce evidence of certain purchases, of money that was spent by Lyle Menendez after his parents died. There's information about the watches. He bought a car. He made offers on a couple of condominiums. The only one that actually ever closed was the condominium in Princeton, which his parents were in the process of buying for him, at the time of their death. It was to close in about 2 weeks. Lyle had helped pick it out, and they were going to pay for it. You will also hear that he purchased a restaurant, and you will hear from his aunt and uncle about their decision to go along with this idea because of their desire to give some structure to the chaotic existence which followed the death of his parents. You will be given information which will help you, I think, to understand the grief process and that everyone does not experience it the same way, and that even
Facts.
people who kill other people mourn their loss, miss them, and love them.
Everyone grieves. Trauma is different on everyone. Absolutely. I can agree with this lady. I don't buy it. I don't think they were in it for the money. I really don't. It's weird not seeing any laptops. I know, right? I haven't watched it, Life Artist. I refuse to watch any documentaries. I know I was in Guilty of Crimes and they were like, get Netflix. I felt like I wanted to watch the trial first and then watch the documentaries. I don't know. I wanted to make sure that I heard the facts presented in the courtroom before I went and made it like a judgment or opinion on the documentary. Even though it's just a documentary, but I feel like it warps my actual like perspective of it after I watched the documentaries, you know? So I just wanted to, that's why I'm covering it. We're covering it all, baby. 1993, we're going back.
If
Way
this
back.
wasn't about money, then what was it about?
Pokemon.
This trial will
Disney
take
movies.
you behind the facade of the rich houses, the fancy
Selena,
cars,
Tupac.
the wealthy friends, and impressive social engagements.
The 90s.
It will take you to the life that was experienced by Lyle Menendez and his brother as they grew up. There's a picture on the board in the middle, which is a picture of Lyle and his little brother, Erik. All of his life, he was responsible for protecting Erik. And he didn't always do it. And in fact, he sometimes hurt his brother. And
AD,
as he
you can't
grew
watch it
older,
without
the
me.
responsibility that he felt for him, for this child with whom he shared a war zone life, became even stronger. And his sense of guilt over some of his shortcomings loomed very large for him. The events which took place on August 20th, 1989, had their genesis long, long before. But immediately before the killing, in those last few days, that last week, an event began which set all of this in motion. Erik Menendez told his brother Lyle Menendez that he couldn't stand it any longer. His father had been molesting him for 12 years. It had gotten more violent, and he couldn't take it. He needed help. He couldn't get out. He couldn't leave, and he couldn't take on his father. And so he turned to his big brother. And his big brother, who had a fairly nice life going for him at the time, had spent the summer at tennis camps, was going back to Princeton in the fall to live in this new condominium, had a girlfriend all lined up that he'd been establishing a relationship with that summer, could not turn his back on his brother. Although shocked to hear that this had been going on for the 12 years, he believed Erik. He believed him because he was his brother, but more importantly, he believed him because he remembered what had happened to him when he was much younger. His experience with his father in terms of molestation had been for a much shorter period of time. It was from about 6 to 8.
Oh my
But he
gosh.
remembers what it felt like. He remembers
Pause. 6 to 8. Maddie Soto? How old was she too? I know I keep referring back to that, but it's because of the case we're seeing now, right? Guilty said a really good comment earlier. She says it's a documentary anyway, so it's good. It's a sensationalized docuseries that weighs in on the violence of the crimes. It's better to watch the trial first. I'm glad you think so. Good to know. I'll watch it though. I will.
remembers the fear and the confusion, the importance of being loved and made to feel special by this charismatic, powerful man who was the center of his universe. He also remembered that when he was 13, he sensed something was going on with his brother. And gathering up all of his courage, he prepared for a talk with his father, as he always prepared for a talk with his father. He made notes and he rehearsed because he didn't want to lose the ability to deliver the message that he had to give him by virtue of being ridiculed for his grammar or laughed at for his lisp or in some way derailed from his purpose. And so at 13, he went to 𝐒𝐲 Menendez and told him he knew what was going on and he wanted it to stop. And his father promised him that it would. Lyle decided that it worked when he was 13, or at least he thought it had. So he was going to try the same procedure again. He was going to talk to his dad about it. Only now he was older. He posed much more of a threat.
Hey, Johnny.
He could tell people. Maybe somebody would believe him now. He knew he wouldn't have been believed at 13. But maybe at 21, he would be believed. So he, again, prepared
Taboo.
for a talk with his father. He made notes, he rehearsed, and then he confronted him. And he told him that he knew what had been going on, and it was going to stop. And it was going to stop now. And his father was going to let him take his little brother and leave the house. He had underestimated his father grossly. His father indicated to him in no uncertain terms that Erik Menendez was his son and he would do whatever he wanted with his son. And that no one was going to threaten him, and no one was going to control him, and no one was going to have a secret like this with which to destroy him. He made it very clear to Lyle Menendez that this secret would never leave this family, and that the people who held this secret and this power over him would not be allowed to live.
I have to pause because I know someone that went through this and they were very much threatened in that same manner back in the 90s. Yeah, I did. I know this person firsthand. She was my friend. Yeah, it's brutal. No one believed her. It was like it took a long time for people to believe her. It's very, very upsetting.
Needless to say, this was not what Lyle had envisioned. Had his brother told him before this conversation, rather than after it, the details of the torture and the sexual abuse he had endured, he would have had a clearer picture of the man with whom he was dealing. Lyle's violent experiences with his father had been, for the most part, when he was young. He respected, admired, loved his father, but more than that, wanted to be loved by his father and found worthy. He didn't think on a daily basis about all of the signs in the past, and he didn't think clearly about them before he spoke with his father. The next few days, he went back and forth between fear and hope, sure that what the message was of impending death, and yet hoping that somehow Dad, who could always fix everything, would somehow find a way out of this for the family, that somehow he would let him know it was okay. And over the next few days, different events occurred which accelerated the brother's fear. On Friday, after this conversation with his father, on Thursday night, and after finding out from his mother that she had known all along of Erik's abuse and didn't protect him.
Imagine your mother knowing. Maddie Soto. How are we outraged? Right? It's literally like almost
The brothers
the
decided
same
to go
thing,
buy handguns.
except Jen wasn't
That seemed like a smart way to protect themselves.
an executive
What they
mogul.
didn't know was you can't go in and just buy a handgun. You have to wait 2 weeks. And they figured they probably wouldn't be around in 2 weeks.
Did their
So
mother
they
know
went
or
to
not?
another gun store
Clearly.
and they talked, and someone said, "Why don't you buy shotguns? That's what people use to protect themselves." And it didn't seem to be nearly as good as being able to have a handgun on you, but it seemed better than being there unprotected. And so they bought the shotguns. They used Donovan Goudreau's driver's license. Donovan had been a very close friend of Lyle's, far closer than Glenn Stevens. And Donovan, because of some things he had done, made a lot of people angry. And Lyle's friends, including Glenn Stevens, and Lyle's father demanded that Donovan be thrown out of the dorm room. Lyle didn't want to do it, but he knew that if he didn't, his father would come do it for him. And so Donovan was ordered out of the dorm room and left behind a number of things, a bag with a lot of objects in it, and included there was Donovan Goudreau's license. And a witness will tell you, not that Lyle gleefully took this with some nefarious purpose, but that she found it on the floor when helping move Lyle out of the dorm room a short time later. Erik Menendez carried that driver's license because he was under 21 and physically quite similar to Donovan. On the date of the shotgun purchase, Lyle did not have a valid California driver's license. His license here had been suspended sometime before, and he'd been living in New Jersey.
I can't judge Lyle. I had a fake ID growing up.
When the prosecution talks about this
Don't judge me now.
plan,
Shit.
this carefully crafted alibi, it so happens that Lyle Menendez had made plans to go to the movie on Sunday night sometime before. And on that day, he made a plan to meet Perry Berman and his friend Todd Hall afterwards. He wanted to be out of the house,
We just wanted to go to the club.
and these plans, which the prosecution now wants to characterize as an alibi, merely proved where he wasn't. Alibis generally are someone saying you were somewhere else, and they can prove it at the time of the crime. And so his plans with Perry Berman merely highlight the fact that he didn't show up where he was supposed to be. They said they went to the movies, and I guess a good plan would have been to have movie tickets, but they didn't have those either. Certain incidents
Kat.
happened right before the parents died. which led these children to believe that they were about to be killed. And they acted. And when it was over, they waited. Although their home was very big, it happens to be close enough to the neighbors' homes that you can hear the television set in your neighbor's house, particularly on a summer evening in August when the windows are open. They knew that when they fired off multiple rounds from shotguns, 2 of them, that everyone would hear, and they did. Any number of neighbors heard this noise. What they didn't count on is that no one called the police station, which was only minutes away. And in that period of time while they were waiting, they made a decision. Maybe we don't have to go to jail. And maybe we don't ever have to tell what happened to this family we want to be so proud of. This family of whom we are a reflection. This family with whom our identity is inextricably tied. And they turned on the light in a room which had previously been illuminated only by the television set, and they picked up shotgun shells. Somehow that seemed like the thing to do. They dumped the guns. They went to the movie theater to get tickets for the movie they were going to see, but it was too late. Couldn't buy tickets. But they did find out that one of the shows had been sold out on that trip. And then they went to the Taste of LA to try to meet their friend Perry Berman. They didn't have a real sense of what time it was and had no idea that it was far too late. And when they got there, he wasn't there. So Lyle Menendez called him on the phone. And Perry Berman will tell you that he heard something in Lyle's voice, some sort of anxiety, some heightened emotion. And he said, "I've got to see you. I've got to talk to you. It's really important. Meet us at the Cheesecake Factory." Convinced Perry to meet him there. And as they left the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium to go to the Cheesecake Factory, both of the boys continued the emotional falling apart that had begun much earlier. But Erik was far more hysterical. Erik was always very emotional, cried easily, and was falling apart. And it was up to his big brother to try and take care of him. He was the one who was supposed to be there for him. So they drove back home. They couldn't continue this any longer. They needed some resolution of it. And yet they didn't want to tell what really had happened. And so they called the police. Lyle Menendez called 911. And you will hear the tape. And there is no question that he lies in the tape. But the emotion is genuine. He goes down to the police station to be interviewed, and Sergeant Edmonds will tell you there was not a doubt in this police officer's mind that these boys were genuinely upset. But they weren't going to tell. They'd made that decision. And so they told not a sophisticated story, not a substantiated story, not of being somewhere where witnesses could say that they were. They didn't produce movie tickets. They just said we went to the movies and then we went to Taste of LA. The police very early on suspected that the boys were responsible. They began to look at the
We're
spending,
almost done.
which I guess if you're going to cover up a crime, you wouldn't begin a few days later by spending a large amount of money on Rolex watches and then start making offers on condominiums and buying expensive cars.
Right, counsel, let's not argue the case, just make an open statement of what you expect the evidence to be.
It's true.
We will be able to show you that there were things, that there were facts that show that this was not done for the money. The boys believed they were out of the will. Jose and Kitty had been discussing taking them out of the will, had told various people they were already out of the will, including their sons. The sons knew that their father's business was required to have a $5 million insurance policy on it.
Wow.
It was one of the employment perks that he had. And they knew that their father had not yet taken the physical examination. and was scheduled to take it within the
Me either,
next
Bun
few
Bun.
weeks.
Or Jojo. And hi, Bun Bun. I saw
They
you.
did not know about the one insurance
I
policy,
saw Bun Bun.
which was the only
yeah.
money that they ever received after this. Their aunt had arranged that with their father, and they never even knew that it existed.
Thank you, Kat. Very long.
The prosecution has told you of the confession to Dr. 𝐒𝐲𝐬. You will hear what Dr. 𝐒𝐲𝐬 has to say. You'll have the opportunity to observe him. We will provide you with additional information which will assist you in evaluating Dr. 𝐒𝐲𝐬's credibility.
So I have to reiterate, there was things left out of the second trial, which is why it wasn't televised. Well, allegedly, it's not why it wasn't televised, but why not televise it? And this Dr. 𝐒𝐲𝐬, let's deep dive into him. I already did. Don't worry. Grab your coffee. We'll be here reviewing it this weekend. Legal documents and everything. Yeah, we'll be seeing it here in the trial. I have
The brothers
nothing to
had
say
made a
about that.
decision that they were not
Just
going
wait
to
till
reveal
you
the
see.
family secrets.
Wait till you see.
And so they gave him some information, and Dr. 𝐒𝐲𝐬 filled in some of the blanks himself. What you will hear in this court from Lyle Menendez, from his teachers, from his coaches, from his friends, his neighbors, his relatives, will be the story of what life was like for him and his brother. You have to remember that the child to whom some of these things happened was not the 25-year-old young man sitting here today, but the young man pictured up on the board. For Lyle, most of the sexual abuse and violence occurred in the
their
years before
childhood.
he was 10. He was arrested in March of 1990.
I believe it.
And he first spoke of his abuse, not to his lawyers, not to the media,
But to his
to his
therapist?
family.
Oh, I thought
After he told
therapist.
his family, he began talking to me about it. And after that, we brought in the experts who you will see here in court. They are not the people who make their living testifying in court. You will see Dr. Stuart Hart and Dr. John Conte, both of whom are university professors, one at Washington and one at Indiana, who have made it their life work to study and evaluate violent families, psychological maltreatment, and child abuse. These experts were brought in and given free rein. They were told they could spend as much time as they wanted with Lyle Menendez. They could review any documents they wanted, see any photographs we had, interview any witnesses they wanted. And what they did was to each spend over 60 hours apiece with Lyle Menendez,
Yay,
just
Bun.
the expert, and Lyle Menendez. They then read over 2,000 pages of interviews with people. They looked at photo albums of the entire family history. They talked to me. They consulted with other experts. And they each selected 10 to 12 witnesses whom they thought were important. And they interviewed those witnesses individually. By
Yeah, Michelle, does signing this petitions do really anything? I think it does. I think it does get somewhere with the district attorney or some entity. But not only that, it brings realization to voting, right? We want to vote for the people in our county, in our districts. And I think the press conference went well today, right? I do want to cover that. I didn't cover it today on the spot, but I'm so intrigued to just get through the first trial, and then I want to watch like everything else. It's like I want to know really what happened in the first trial before I watch anything else. I'm very proud that the DA is considering it. Hi, Britt Nicole. Thanks for being here, my girl. But I do want to know exactly what happened, even though we'll never know, right, until they speak out.
now
Hopefully
each of them has
soon
spent
they're let
over
out.
300 hours on this case.
Yay!
They have seen and read and talked to everyone they wanted to talk to.
We
They've
need the
met with
interview.
family members. They've interviewed friends, girlfriends, coaches, and teachers. And for months, they gave no information of what their conclusion was. And they will tell you here in court what a year and a half later they have discovered. They will explain to you the type of abuse that was suffered and the effect that it had. They will explain to you what happened to Lyle Menendez and what the relationship was of those events to what happened on August 20th, 1989. Lyle Menendez will also testify here in court.
I can't
You will have an
wait to see that with you
opportunity to
guys.
see him, to hear him, to evaluate his
so good.
credibility, and to watch him be examined and
Period.
cross-examined here in front of you. And what Lyle will tell you will be that he got several messages from his parents, from his mother, who didn't want him in the first place, and told him all of his life, that he had ruined her life, that she could have had a great career in broadcasting or drama, but for him. He was told on a regular basis that he was inadequate. He was humiliated, degraded, and rejected by this woman who in the last 3 years of her life was violent, unstable, drug-addicted, alcohol-dependent, and obsessive. He lived in a world of contradictions. For most of the time, the house was filthy. The laundry piled up. The ferret, who was never trained to go to the bathroom wherever he should have, went to the bathroom all over the house. They would have boxes and boxes and boxes of carnation bars and no other food. And then his mother would decide she was going to sell Shackley vitamins, and all of the toys would be thrown out and the cupboards would be filled with the vitamins. He was punished by being put under her bed where it was too small for him to turn over, which happened to be one of the areas the ferret liked to use to go to the bathroom. He will tell you of doing his term paper, and when called by her not responding soon enough, and having her rip it up in front of his eyes. He will tell you of being chased by her with a knife, of calling to her when she's in the kitchen making dinner, and her cutting herself, and her smearing her blood on his face, and making him sit through dinner, and his fear that he was going to have to go to school in that condition.
I believe
He
it.
will tell you of the abandonment, which a number of people saw. Kitty Menendez had to drag her children with her shopping. But her solution was to leave Lyle Menendez and his younger brother in his care and go shopping. And eventually they'd be picked up by the security guards, and eventually she would be paged, and she would tell the people she was shopping with, "That's fine, I know where they are." And the children would sit with the security guards waiting for her to come back. They would be left at school and at tennis practice for hours afterward. The message was always the same. I didn't want you in the first place, and I don't want you now. You get in the way, you ruin my life.
Wow.
And this was complicated by the fact that 𝐒𝐤 Menendez took an extraordinary interest in this first child of his heir apparent. And there's an interesting photograph on the board on the left side on the bottom, which is 𝐒𝐤 Menendez with his little boy, Lyle Menendez, in exactly the same posture, in exactly the same position, hands in pocket, foot on stairs. And Lyle Menendez was 𝐒𝐤's great project. What one of the relatives says, he was to be the corrected version of 𝐒𝐤. He was to have all of the things that 𝐒𝐤 didn't have. Well, all of us want for our children the best. We all want for them the things we didn't have, but for him, the particular areas of concern were the fact that he did not get to have the special training and coaching so that he could have been the swimming star he thought he could have been. He lived his life humiliated by the fact that he was surrounded by Ivy League graduates, and he'd gone to Queens College.
Imagine a trial where you have no computers. Huh? What? What did you say? No computers, no iPhones? Bye. I don't belong here. No. Britt says, I don't know about this case, which is why I wanted to cover it. I figured here we are making judgments and opinions about all these cases, right? And true crime. I'm a true crime junkie. You guys know that. I don't need to say anything. But I feel like we have all these opinions on this case. And who really watched the trial? I would like to know which one of you guys sat there and watched the trial in 1993 or even replayed it recently. I never did. I will be the first to admit I didn't catch up. I wasn't into this case back then. I wasn't. I very much am into it now. So we're watching it back, all of it. And by the time they get out, hopefully we would have gone through the first trial. So we'll know. People will ask us. Yeah, you were too young, maybe. I was too young too. I would have been like a toddler back then. Whoa.
He also,
Whoa.
for reasons that I think are described by his background, resented the fact that at age 15 he had to leave Cuba,
Babies.
where he loved to tell everybody he was a member of the aristocracy, and came to America.
13.
And he had to do menial work. He had to support himself. He had to wash dishes and sweep floors. He was going to get back his social position and more. And his son was going to be the prince. He was going to play tennis, have the best coaches. He was going to go to Princeton. He was going to have all the money he needed. He was not going to suffer any of the degradation of being working class, which was so offensive to Jose. And it was interesting because he ran into a woman, Mary Louise Anderson, who had a lot of the same issues. She was the daughter of a divorced family in a small Irish Catholic town in Illinois, where people didn't get divorced in the 40s, and she was ostracized. She had a violent, bigoted, cruel father who left her mother. Her mother was at first emotionally unstable enough that she was hospitalized and spent the rest of her life mourning the loss of her husband, and gave Kitty Menendez the same message that Kitty Menendez gave her children. You know, things were fine until kids came along. Kids change your life. Well, kids changed Kitty Menendez's life, because now Jose spent all the time that he wasn't either spending working or with his girlfriends, with his son. He told his son he was special. He told his son he was going to be great. He would spend hours with this little child in the basement, giving him inspirational talks, passing along motivational material, drilling him on tennis, making him repeat, making him memorize, conditioning him to have all of the thoughts that Jose thought were right.
Why are you in the basement with your dad for that long? I don't know. I'm curious. I'm very close to my dad, so don't get me started on that, because it's nothing like this. I know everyone's like, I was 16 and I was going to the Right TV. I have to go to see what was going on. But it's different, right? Like, as our minds and as we grow and progress into humans in society, like, we change. So I feel like, would it be the same if you viewed it back in 1993 and you're viewing it now? Hence, us in 2024 seeing the difficulty and what it was like back then when things like this were taboo. Do I make sense? I'm trying to think of it in like what I experienced, right? And so I'm thinking like, when I told my mom about this, she was like blown away. She was like, what? What do you mean? And I'm like, she's like, what do you mean they didn't? But back then it's like, they didn't listen to claims of domestic violence and SA, and it was taboo back then. So I feel like things were different, and people were different. We were different,
And
right?
none of his own. One of his
that
cousins
make sense?
says one of the most amazing
You're like,
things about
"No,
Lyle
Melly,
Menendez
shut
as
up."
a little boy was he would start a sentence to tell you what he thought. He'd glance over at his dad and see that look of disapproval, and midstream
I agree,
switch that
Tipsy.
sentence around to the other position, which he knew was the right one for his dad, regardless of what his own views were.
You made it, my love, Christian.
The children saw Jose Menendez as all-powerful. He flaunted the law. He bragged of his illegal acts. He told with glee of firing people and destroying careers. He reveled in his sadism. He talked to them about all he could do. He was the shepherd and the rest were the sheep, a message that he passed on to his son and made him memorize. He convinced his son that he was inept, that he was helpless,
Verbal abuse,
that he was stupid,
mental abuse,
and that he would never make any kind of a life for himself
psychological abuse.
unless his father was there to help him. He grafted his own ambitious,
Again, let's not argue the case.
hostile personality on a child
Don't
with
cut her off.
absolutely no regard.
Counsel, I said, don't argue the case.
I don't like the way these people are talking to the female. I don't like it. It's triggering for me. Y'all are like, what's going on here? Kristen, thanks for making it. I need to read what you guys are saying. Melly, don't shut up. Avi, I love you. Thank you. Wait, I didn't want to know the details back then. Jojo, you didn't want to know the details back then. Right. I don't blame you. Hey, Gilly. You found me.
You've been going through a lot of this in
Welcome.
argument rather than just presentation of what you expect the
We're
evidence to
almost
be.
done.
Witnesses
I love you
will
guys. Thank
tell
you for being here.
Of a young man who was shy, introverted, and sensitive. You will hear of what dinner was like at the Menendez home, what other people called Jeopardy dinners, where you were quizzed, and the price for not knowing the answer
Quiz?
was to be made to feel stupid. If you didn't swim well enough, you were yelled at. You were held underwater. When you played tennis, you were drilled and drilled and drilled. And where other kids played for an hour, you played for 6.
Can you imagine? I can't. I'm sorry. We all have different experiences, right? But my father would never be the one to be doing this kind of stuff. If anything, he's been like my back, my rock. You know what I mean? I probably wouldn't even be here. The judge is rude. Avi. Yes, Avi, the judge is rude. Okay. Oh my God. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. We're going back in time, and like, I know there's so many trials, so much grifting, so much drama in the YouTube streets, but we're going back to 1993 to a case that matters, a case that's now present in present times. We're covering this trial from 1993. If you missed the first episode, we covered opening statements, which does include some of this information. I did cover the first press conference. And then today we're covering Lyle Menendez opening statements. Tomorrow we'll keep going. So it's like a series. So welcome. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you guys so much.
And when Dad
Truly.
wanted to teach you reflex drills, he hit the ball as hard as he could directly at you. So the Lyle Menendez walked away from many a reflex drill with a
Griffin's
number
on
of
YouTube.
welts. What happens to this child
Try
who is
not to
supposed to be perfect
be
when it
good.
turns out he has a speech impediment? He's ridiculed, he's laughed at, he starts a sentence and is humiliated and stops talking. He walks like a duck with his feet out, and his father quacks and tells him not to walk with him. It's too embarrassing. When at 14 he's still wetting the bed, his sheets appear on the breakfast room table. When he brings a rabbit home from school and his mother says your father wants to have you get rid of it, and he doesn't do it for a few days, he comes home and asks his mother where the rabbit is. She says, ask your father. And his father tells him, go to the garbage. And there is the rabbit with its head smashed.
Whoa. Animal violence is not okay. Never okay here. First trial was 1993 to 1994. I don't know the exact months. I have to look in my notes. But then the second trial was 1994 to 1995, and that was not televised. We don't have access to that. I have the transcript. It's a book. We're probably not going to cover that, but at least we're covering the first trial, and hopefully by the time we're done, they're let out. Free.
Others who lived in that house knew that when Jose took off his belt Someone was going to get beaten. You didn't know who, and you didn't know why. And when Lyle had the nerve to go into a deli at about age 7 and buy some junk food, and his father looked in the bag, he didn't lecture him about health or rotten teeth. He just socked him in the stomach. And when in wrestling, Lyle grabbed him in his genitals, playing around during the time he was being molested,
Ooh.
Jose took him and threw him into a table, a coffee table. And you will still see the scar on his eye. And we have a photograph. And we have medical records.
Yeah, they were,
Lyle
Gilly.
also has a scar that runs down his lip to his chin. When he was
Rude.
about 16, he was out practicing tennis. And his father watched him and came and harassed him and pushed him in ways that his coach said he'd never seen done before. And when Lyle yelled at him to shut up, his father grabbed him, put him in the limousine, which was his father's usual means of transportation, grabbed him by the throat, and socked him square in the face, and said, "If you ever embarrass me again, I will kill you."
Wow.
The Menendez family blended sex and violence. They showed porno films to neighbors who were outraged and then bragged they'd shown them to the children. They had no boundaries. The boys showered with their father up to the very end, and their mother in their teens was still coming in the bathtub and bathing them and washing their hair. The problem is children love their parents and want to
Bathing
be
them?
loved by them. And so they stay, and they endure, and they believe they are responsible. And
Oh my God.
between the years,
Yes, counsel.
Stop interrupting her.
Again, this is not the opportunity to argue the case. It's the
Can she
opportunity to
finish?
give the jury an idea of what you expect the evidence
You
to
got
be.
mad over here.
between the years of
Sorry,
6 and
guys.
8, around the time Lyle was playing soccer, as you can see from the picture on the right, his father extended these intense conversations into massages. He told them that
Massages?
this was the type of thing that the Romans did, that this is what fathers and sons do, that he was special, that this was a special
Romans?
bond that they had. And he began the sexual molestation. And Lyle felt confusion and fear, but he also liked the attention, and he also liked the fact that Dad thought he was important. But as things progressed, objects were used, which hurt, and eventually there was an anal rape, which hurt even more.
Trigger warning.
Lyle
Sorry,
confronted
guys.
his dad, screamed at him, told his mother, "Please ask Dad to leave me alone, he's hurting me." She said, "Your dad loves you. You have to be punished sometimes." The teachers will tell you of the pressure that they saw and of the sadness they saw. And they will admit to you that they didn't interfere and they didn't protect these children because they were afraid of the parents. They were afraid of Jose Menendez, and they were afraid of Kitty Menendez. The coach
Afraid like what? Like they're gonna pull up to your house or what? Thank you, Gilly. Yes, trigger warning. I do. Yeah, no, definitely. Wait till he's. You guys, it gets so good.
will tell you of the
You have no
brutality
idea.
and the control exhibited
One of the
through
best
the
trials.
lessons, and those who wouldn't go to the extent that was required were fired. In 1986, the family moved to California, and about this time, Kitty Menendez discovered that her husband had been having an affair for approximately 8 years. An already unstable woman now got worse. She was seeing a therapist on a regular basis. She was taking massive dosages of antidepressant drugs. She was drinking. She was acting in all kinds of obsessive ways. She was leaving suicide notes for her sons. She was attempting suicide. She was threatening to poison the family. A crazy woman got even crazier. During the
Exactly.
last week, Lyle and Erik Menendez talked to each other about experiences that each of them had had that the others didn't even know about. They talked about a mother who was willing to die and willing to kill. They talked about a father who who was not going to be controlled by anyone or anything. They talked about parents who can treat their children as objects, who can abuse and use and degrade them. And they knew that these were parents who could kill their children.
All right, is that the open?
Okay, you guys, we have like 5 more minutes of this. Thank you for being here, going through Lyle Menendez opening statements. Tomorrow we'll be going through Erik's. Yeah, we're doing it. We're deep
Statement for the
diving.
defense? Okay.
You're stuck
All
with
right,
me
ladies and
now.
gentlemen, we'll take a recess.
Stuck.
But before I do, let me again say that all that you heard so far is what the lawyers expect to show by the evidence and what they expect the evidence to be. You will be the judges of the evidence. You will decide how you evaluate whatever is presented to you and decide, based upon the evidence presented to you, what happened in this case. I'm going to excuse you. We have the other jury yet to deal with. We have opening statements for them. The lawyers have some things they want to discuss with me. What I'm going to do is excuse you until 3 o'clock, and hopefully by then the openings, get any of the news coverage on television. Don't listen to anything on radio. Don't look at any of the news coverage in the media.
I showed him the open and he
I don't want to listen to.
And we'll
like,
see you all back here at 3 o'clock in Department S, and then we'll communicate with you by the court staff as to whether we have an opportunity to have you come down here for some testimony. So you can all leave now and have your
Thank you,
lunch.
Bun
And we'll see you
Bun.
at
I
3
love you,
o'clock.
Bun Bun.
I'll ask everybody in the audience, stay seated until the jury is left.
All right, so we went through it. We did it. We went through Lyle Menendez opening statements. Tomorrow we'll go through Erik's. Wait till we get to the psychologist, Dr. 𝐒𝐤𝐬, and the female, I can't remember her name, the female psychologist. And wait, in the 911 call, all of it. It's too good, you guys. Yeah, we're stuck. We're stuck back in 1993. I appreciate you guys for being here. Make sure you hit that like button. We're on part 2. We'll continue part 3 tomorrow and throughout the weekend. I will be live. I will actually be live tonight. Right after this, we're going to cover Wade. You already know. You already know. So I hope to see you guys here shortly in like 20 minutes on my next live. Thank you, Gilly, for being here. Yeah, like 20 minutes. I'm just going to schedule it on StreamYard and then I'll be back. I have 2 more lives. So for the late night crew, what up? What up? And for the replay crew, thank you. We are now YouTube members, partners, what do they call it? I'm now in a relationship with YouTube. No, but really, make sure you guys hit that like button. Please continue coming back. It's all true crime here, all good vibes. I have some really good stuff coming up. Cases, phone calls, jail calls. We're doing it all here. We're doing it all, baby. I appreciate you guys all for being here. So give me like 20 minutes and we'll be back with some jail calls. If you know, you know. Yeah, so I'll schedule it right after this. I just wanted to make sure that I did my Menendez brothers. We're covering this trial every day until we finish the first trial. Hopefully by then they are out. And if people ask us like, what do you know? What do you know about that? We're going to be like, what do you mean? We know everything. We watched the whole trial. What do you know about that? No, not the bunny one. I got the ones from today. I'll be in bed, but I'll watch the replay. Okay, Avi, we'll miss you. Anyways, yeah, we do. I appreciate you guys. Make sure you hit that like button and make sure that I see you on the next live. Thanks for being here, you guys. I very much so appreciate you guys. Make sure you hit the like button. Bye.